Hola, este video se trata del pretérito, el otro tiempo pasado. Tenemos dos tiempos pasados en el español y el primero tú ya has aprendido, you've already learned, el imperfecto. Recuerda que el imperfecto es un tiempo pasado que pasaba, que ocurría, right? Descriptive, ongoing actions in the past. El pretérito, el otro tiempo en el pasado, es para acciones completadas, acciones acabadas, acciones que ocurrieron en el pasado. So the preterite tense is used for actions that happened with a definite beginning and a definite end. Unlike the imperfect tense, we don't know when it started or when it stopped. It's just to say that something happened in the past and that could still be going on today. Like the car was red. Well, the car was red and it probably is today, but we're not saying that. So the preterite tense is used to talk about things that happened. Something started and something ended. I did this and I finished it and I did something else. One way to think about this is that in English, many of these verbs end with ed. Think present tense kick, past tense kicked. Present tense punch, past tense punched. Present tense say, past tense said. So just like in English, Spanish has a lot of irregular conjugations in this tense. Take a look. Many of the other irregular verbs in English are to eat, ate, to go, went, speak, spoke, be, was, fly, flew, sleep, slept, take, took. These don't take that ed ending, but they're still considered past tense actions that happened. What happened? I ate a cheeseburger. What happened? I went to the store. What happened? I spoke my mind. What happened? I was there. What happened? I flew to Cuba. What happened? I slept all night. What happened? I took an apple. For regular AR verbs like hablar, bailar, matar, pegar, luchar, comenzar, the conjugations are haste, o, amos, aron. This is in a little bit of different setup than you're used to seeing. Usually I put it in a conjugation chart, but the yo form is a. For example, I spoke would be yo hablé. You want to punch that sound, that stressed vowel at the end, just like we do in English. I talked, so we're going to say hablé. The to form, you spoke, hablaste, hablaste. The he, she form, or the usted form, habló, habló. Notice the accent is really important because it's really important in verbs because it tells us who and when. So accents are very important. Notice the difference here. If I say hablo, that's I talk, I do talk. But if I say habló, that means she spoke or she talked. Listen to the difference again. Yo hablo el español. Ella habló en español. Hear the difference? It makes a big difference, actually. For we talk or we talked, it's the same conjugation. The present tense and past tense are the same. Hablamos. And hablaron is they spoke or you guys spoke. Hablaron. So listen to these again. Yo hablé. Tú hablaste. Ella habló. Nosotros hablamos. Ellos hablaron. What's kind of nice about this tense is that ER verbs and AR verbs have the same conjugations. They have the same endings. The endings are I, iste, io, imos, and ieron. So if I take a verb like comer, I would say yo comí. Tú comiste. Él comió. Nosotros comimos. Ellos comieron. If I use a verb like vivir, yo viví, tú viviste, él vivió, nosotros vivimos, ellos vivieron. Down here in this section, we have the irregular verbs. There are lots of irregular verbs in the preterite tense in Spanish, and they're also some of the most commonly used verbs in the language too. See if you can decipher the original infinitive verbs. Here we have yo estuve, tú estuviste, él estuvo, nosotros estuvimos, ellos estuvieron. Yo fui, tú fuiste, él fue, nosotros fuimos, ellos fueron. Go ahead and pause this video. Take a second and jot down what you think the original verbs are. Some of them will stump you, and that's okay. They look totally different in this past tense. So pause the video, fill it out, and click play, and you'll see the answers. So in the preterite tense, we have the verb estar. Yo estuve means I was, like I was there. This is something you carve into a tree. I would recommend doing that. But if you want to say I was here, you would say yo estuve aquí, because you were there and then you left. That's different than estaba, I was already there. Okay. Tener, we have our root is tuve. So yo tuve is like I had, in the sense of I got. I had something in that moment and then I didn't anymore. Or I got something in that moment. That's different than tenía, which is I had all along. This is tuve. Ser and ir, if you notice, they have the same conjugation, which is kind of odd if you think about it. To say like I was something in a specific time would be yo fui. Lots of times we use ser in the preterite tense really just to talk about people after they passed. Like you would say Salvador Dali or Frida Kahlo. You would say él fue pintor. Ella fue pintora. He was a painter. She was a painter. Because they no longer are, because they're dead now. Okay. That's basically like era. Fue and era are very similar. They just mean was in the past tense. Ir is yo fui, I went. Tú fuiste, él fue. Nosotros fuimos, ellos fueron. Not to be a little vulgar, but a way that helped me remember the difference between fui and fue, because they get confused a lot, is in this kind of example. So just 5 seconds ago, I ran to Philadelphia and I came back, right? You're telling this to someone. You go, yeah, right. No, you didn't. You can say, F-U, I went there. Okay, so F-U-I means went. Fui, yo fui. Poner is irregular. Yo puse, I put. Pusiste, you put. Él puso, he put. Pusimos, we put. Pusieron, they put. Goofy sounding tense, I know. Poder. In this tense, poder means managed to. In the imperfect, it means was able to or could. So I would say, I was able to go. Yo podía ir. That's a descriptive past. Here we have pude. Yo pude ir. That means I managed to go. I was able to and I did it. So sometimes there's a little slight difference in the meaning between the imperfect and the preterite tense. Traer, to bring. I brought. Yo traje. Tú trajiste. Él trajo. Nosotros trajimos. Ellos trajeron. Notice that just like with ser and ir, the I is dropped in just the E. Why? I don't know. It's just easier to pronounce that way. Hacer, to do. To say I did or I made, you would say yo hice. Tú hiciste. Él hizo. Nosotros hicimos. Ellos hicieron. Haber. This is where we get the verb I from in the present tense, or había, there was, there were in the imperfect tense. Here we have hubo. Hubo is like había. Había and hubo, they both mean there was or there were. The difference is había is like there was, there already was. Like había un chico, there was a boy. In the time I'm telling the story, there was a boy, and he existed before this story occurred too. Hubo is more used for sudden actions that happened. Like hubo un accidente de carro, there was a car accident. Hubo una explosión, there was an explosion. The reason why we use hubo instead of había is because there wasn't an explosion, then there was, and then it stopped. So hubo is like spontaneous, there was, like something appeared, something happened. It was a sudden sound, a sudden thing that occurred. While había means it was already there, like in the background. Okay. Saber means to know. And in the imperfect, I would say yo sabía, I knew something. In the preterite tense, it changes meaning. Yo supe means I learned or I found out. If you kind of think about it, sabía, I knew it. It's a continuous kind of thing. I knew it all along. Supe, if you want to say you discovered or learned something, that's an action. I didn't know it, and then I did. That's yo supe. Yo supe su nombre. I found out her name. But if you want to say I already knew her name, yo sabía su nombre. Querer, to want. And the imperfect, yo quería, means I wanted. But in the past tense, in this preterite past tense, yo quise actually changes meaning. Sometimes it's used for I wanted in a very specific moment. But most of the time when you hear quis, like quise, quisiste, quiso, it means tried. So yo quise llamarte means I tried to call you, while quería llamarte means I wanted to call you. Venir, to come, to say like I came to the party to have fun. You would say yo vine, tú viniste, él vino, nosotros vinimos, ellos vinieron. Decir, to say or to tell. We have dije, I said, dijiste, you said, dijo, he said, dijimos, we said, dijeron. Sorry, that I should not be there. It should be dijeron. Dijeron, they said. Change there. For they said it's dijeron, because dijeron, it's just kind of harder to sound, I guess. I'm not really sure what happened there. Ver, to see, to say I saw something. Boom, I looked at it, I saw it. Yo vi, tú viste, él vio, nosotros vimos, ellos vieron. Decir, we did this already. This should say dar. Dar is to give. So to say I gave, you would say yo di, tú diste, nosotros dimos, ellos dieron. This is gave as opposed to was given. So the preterite tense is an action that happened in the past, while the imperfect is something that was going on in the past, or that happened habitually. Okay, these are more, the preterite tense is a more interesting tense because it's like a timeline of events. This happened, that happened, that happened, that happened, while the imperfect is just used to describe the past. I know there's a lot going on with imperfect and preterite, lots of explanation, but I found that the more that I repeat things and the more I emphasize certain things, the more chances you have of picking up on it. Reading it, as long as we can read it in the past and understand it, we're in a good place. Creating the language, deciding between which tense, I know is very difficult. It takes a long time. But so these are good notes to have, a good reference to have, especially while we're reading our novels. It's a good reference to look at. You can say, what the heck? What's fue? And we can look on our chart, fue. Well, it can either mean he went or it can mean he was, and we can figure it out in context that way. There are three types of verbs that are irregular just in the yo form, and these are verbs that end with car, like tocar, to touch, to knock, or to play an instrument. Gar, like the verb jugar, to play, and zar, like comenzar or empezar, and they both mean to start or to begin. These types of verbs are only irregular in the yo form, and it's just basically for like spelling reasons. Toqué, I touched. Jugué, I played. Empecé, I started. The reason why we had to have that QU there is because if we kept the C there, it would be pronounced tose, and that's a different word. If we did not put that U there, it would be pronounced jugué, and we want to keep that original sound of jugar. And comenzar, or empezar, we have empecé with a C. The rule is you can't have a Z next to an E. It has to be a C, so it's kind of a silly minor thing, but just not to throw you off or anything, that this is still past tense. There's just some spelling change that happen with some verbs. If you don't know the word triphthong is just a silly grammatical term that means three vowels in a row that don't have an accent. In Spanish, you can't have three vowels in a row without an accent. That's what's called a triphthong, or three vowels there. So here, leyó is how we would normally conjugate it. However, we can't have these three vowels in a row like that. So that's why sometimes an I becomes a Y, and it makes it a lot easier to pronounce too. Here we have leyó and leyeron.